Morning, Making Club Champion listeners. I am recording this episode at one of my favourite places, a place called the Lido in Bristol. It's a cold, somewhat frosty morning in England, but I'm currently drinking my yerba mate tea, which is an Argentinian tea, I believe, which is a good alternative for coffee if you haven't tried. You can add some sort of dark chocolate in there as well to make it that even more special. Anyway, I thought I'd start this episode with a couple of things which I think have found to be of great value or to my life or even my golf game. I had a couple of sponsors try and reach out to me for the show, but if it's something I don't personally believe in, I don't think it's worth mentioning. But these are a couple of things which I've used for the last couple of years, which I think may be of value to you listeners and your game. So these are not paid to be mentioned, but these are just things I personally love. So one of them is called, there's an app called Headspace, and I think it's available on iOS and Android. So if you have those two phones, there's both available, and I think it's free. They have a 10-day free option, which is worth checking out. But I've been using this app since, I'd say roughly around 2015, and I was going through a particularly tough time and I needed to make a big decision in my life, and I used this app nearly every day, and it just helps me to think clearly. When I get overwhelmed, it makes me make more effective, better decisions. And I also use this before playing golf in a golf competition. I usually sit in the car park in my car and just zone out for about 10 minutes. It's a guided meditation. And I just put on the headphones and I just do a little meditation before a given competition, or even a morning when I'm trying to get some work done, like for one of these podcasts. I found it super helpful, and 3 years later, I'm still using it. So maybe worth checking out if you haven't heard of it. So I think it's headspace.com, and it's free. And they also have a paid option as well, of course. Another thing I found particularly helpful, which has come up in this show, is a thing called a pulse roll. And me and Scott actually talk about this. And it's if you really suck at stretching and really do not enjoy any element of stretching, this thing does all the work for you. It's like a big vibrating ball, but you can sit on it in the evenings while listening to a podcast or watching a movie, and this thing will do all the work for you, I promise. It's got 3 different speed options, and you just lie on it. And for those who absolutely hate stretching, it's an absolute winner. Anyway, this episode is why you're here, and the guest we are featuring is Scott Gregory. First of all, why are we featuring Scott? Well, I think I first saw Scott at the European Q-School Finals in Spain last year, and I was kind of blown away. I don't know if you've been to a competition and some people just have that greater presence about them. Well, Scott certainly had this sort of aura about him, and I remember, I think I was with Joe Dean and Jonathan Thompson at the time, and I asked who this player was walking around the facility, and they sort of told me a bit about him, and I've sort of been inspired by him ever since, and I followed him online on Instagram and been very, I think inspired would be the word, of how he goes about his business day to day, how he practices. He's always in the gym, working out in the earliest hour of the morning, and you can see some of the pictures he posts that he's putting in his garage late at night. None of it looks pretty, but you can tell he's really truly grinding away, and he gives it everything, and he's all about sort of mastering his own mastery to the game. So it's a very inspiring guy, and you can understand why he's played in events like the Masters, the US Open, the Open Championship, been member of the Walker Cup team, winner of the British Amateur Championship at Royal Porth Call. So he's done there and been a lot, and he's got the second stage Q-School coming up, which of course we wish him the very best for. In this episode, we cover a lot, and you'll learn a couple of things, such as how Scott spent the afternoon eating a ham sandwich with Jack Nicklaus, what's Scott's favourite drill on the golf course, what's Scott's favourite drill in the gym, what tools and training aids he takes to a competition with him, how he structures his golfing goals for a given week, months, and even 6 weeks, and much, much more. So I hope you enjoy this episode featuring Scott Gregory, and we'll let him take it away. Scott Gregory, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So I thought we'd start with, I just noticed on your Google Mail profile picture, there's a picture with you and Jack Nicklaus. Just wondering how that came about and what that sort of afternoon or maybe an hour or two was with him like.
Yeah, it came about. I got invited to play in his tournament at the Memorial last year, and I asked if I could speak to Jack in person, but I asked to speak to him at the Masters, and unfortunately he had media commitments, so I wasn't able to meet with him at Augusta National. But his manager Scott said to me he's happy to meet you at Muirfield Village and like have lunch with you in the clubhouse, etc. So we just left it at that in April, and then I had a phone call just before I boarded the plane to go to the Memorial, and it was his manager again to say, "Oh, we're awfully sorry. There's a society on tomorrow at the golf club. So Jack wants to go somewhere more private. Are you happy to come to his house?" So I ended up going to his house on the golf course at Muirfield Village, and was there for about an hour and a half. Just had a bite to eat and a cup of tea, and just chatted all things golf and picked his brains a little bit. But it's one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had, to be honest, just to be able to speak to someone like that.
How amazing. Let's start off with what did he cook, or what was on the plate?
We just had that, like a simple ham sandwich and then a nice traditional English cup of tea. But yeah, it's just incredible to be able to spend time with someone who's done what he's done in the game and just ask him questions and see his house and everything that he's done. Really, it's just, he's been influential to everyone in the game, even people like Tiger and stuff like that. He's just a great bloke.
And what sort of specific questions did you ask him or pick his brain about?
I asked him like a little bit about preparation and how he coped with pressure, and just things like what he done after tournament rounds, how he cooled down. Because it's something I struggle with of doing a bit too much after rounds. So it was good to pick his brains and see what he done, and just keeping it simple. And he spoke a lot about trying to peak at the right time. You want to peak on Sundays, not Mondays. So he said he'd like to turn up at tournaments and not have his best stuff on Monday, but know that on Sunday no one could touch him.
How interesting. And was it obviously, you know we can read books and take in as much information as we want, but how easy was it, or how much did you have to work on applying some of those actions or principles which Jack learnt and then you to put in your own game?
It's taken a while. I mean, I'm still trying to get better at it because it's something I need to work on. I tend to overwork myself a little bit, and I picked up a wrist injury this year from doing that as well. So it's trying to manage myself a bit better. I mean, if I finish and I don't feel like I've hit it good, I probably hit too many balls, and just need to control it a little bit and make it a bit more productive, which is what I learned from Jack, really. Just if you finish your round and you don't feel like you've driven it good, go out and hit some purposeful drives and get a feeling for the next day.
Yeah. I also noticed on your sort of social media you had a picture with Tiger Woods as well. I was wondering if you could perhaps touch on that.
Yeah, that's the most nervous I've been in my life, because that's someone I've always wanted to meet. He's been probably the reason I started playing golf, and someone I've watched since I was a kid playing. So I saw him for I turned up on the Monday morning and hit some putts and stuff, and it's just really freaky. When he walks past you, you don't have to look to see it's Tiger. You can hear that it's Tiger. It's people just appear from everywhere. You can hear people running, cameras going, like everything. And I just watched him hit chip shots and stuff the first time I saw him, and he's out of this world. Some of the shots he can play with different clubs and moving the ball around, it's incredible. And my girlfriend kept saying to me, go up and ask for a picture. But I didn't do it that day. I was too nervous. So later in the week, when he walked onto the range, he had a cup of coffee in his hand, and I just asked him if I could have a picture, and we shook hands and I wished him well for the week. But he was a lovely bloke. He was better than I expected. I didn't think he'd have a picture with me, but he was really genuine, to be honest.
And where was it? Was that at the US Open?
Yeah, that was at Shinnecock Hills this year.
Fantastic. And what perhaps if you could touch on there to begin the show with, what was, I mean, because you went, how did you qualify originally to Shinnecock? What was the story? Was it first stage at qualifying school?
No, I was exempt to the final qualifying at Walton Heath because of playing the Walker Cup and winning the British Am. So I went straight to Walton Heath to play the qualifying, and I'd been suffering with my wrist for quite a while before that, probably 4 or 5 weeks, and I wasn't 100% with it. And I played the practice round, and it didn't feel great. I didn't play. There's 2 courses, and I didn't play the second one because it was hurting, and I just iced it and rested it, and I didn't really know if I'd be able to play. And I woke up the next day and it was a bit stiff, but I guess the adrenaline took over, and I ended up doing all right in the first round, and then I had to just keep icing it and taking tablets and stuff, and in the end shot 8 under for the 2 rounds and got through. So it was one of those weird ones where going into it I almost didn't expect anything because I'd been injured and wasn't playing great, and then ended up qualifying to play in one of the biggest tournaments in the world.
And then it's pretty soon after there, isn't it? After that, the final stage at Walton.
Yeah, it was only 2 weeks later, so I didn't have long to get ready, and I'd signed up for the Challenge Tour event in Belgium, so I went straight to Belgium from Walton Heath and played that, and then from there to the US Open.
And did you take your family with you to Walton, or to Shinnecock? Sorry.
No, I only had my girlfriend there, and then I had a friend of mine who I met in America a couple of years ago. He's in the army, and then I gave the rest of the tickets to all of his army friends from his base, and they came out and watched me.
Yeah, I did hear about that actually. That was obviously a very kind gesture.
Yeah, they loved it, and they were rowdy as well. They enjoyed a good drink in the hospitality tents.
The Gregory army following him at the US Open.
Yeah.
So what was the lessons learned from the US Open? Because I know you've played in you played in the Masters before. Is that correct?
Yeah. I played the Masters, the Open, and the US Open at Erin Hills last year, and then obviously the US Open at Shinnecock this year.
So I wonder if we could touch on what is it like playing in these sort of these major events? How is it different? How does one prepare for a given week there?
It's strange. You try and prepare for it all the same, and I think my preparation got better each time. I probably almost put a little bit too much time into it before at Augusta and the Open and stuff, trying to almost overthink everything. I mean, the guys on tour just treat it like another week, and I think that's exactly what you got to do. If you normally turn up on a Tuesday, just turn up on a Tuesday and get your work done like normal, because I think you can get caught up in it a bit too much. But it's hard not to, because the things that come with it are just out of this world. They're not the same as every other week. Like the hospitality tents, the player lounges, they're just on a different level to any other week on tour. But you've just got to try and focus and prepare exactly the same as you do every other week, which obviously isn't that easy.
Yeah, I bet. So perhaps we could start off at the Masters, and what was that like?
That was incredible.
And these tournaments came on the back of the amateur championship win at Royal Porthcawl.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. The Open at Royal Troon, and then Masters and US Open.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, the Masters. What did you learn, and what was the experience like?
It's just a different place to anywhere else I've ever been. Like, you see it on TV and it's all exclusive. You know that not many people get to play it, and the conditions are just unbelievable. It's like walking on AstroTurf. It's just perfect. There's not a blade of grass out of place. And it's actually a lot more welcoming than what I thought it would be as well. I didn't think you'd be made to feel that welcome, but they welcome all of the players and the amateurs with open arms. It's like a really friendly tournament.
And who did you do the practice rounds with?
The first, I went the week before, and the first time I ever played the course, I ended up joining up with Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson.
Right.
Which
2 short hitters.
That was I was. It felt like I was in a different group. They were so far ahead. But but both flush it, and couldn't have been nicer, to be honest. Brooks and Dustin, just really nice guys, happy to share with me different things about the golf course and wish me well for the week. And they remembered me as the week went on as well. So that was great fun getting to play with them. And then the actual practice rounds, I played with Rafa Cabrera-Bello and then Jason Day and then Jimmy Walker. So again, 3 world-class players that were more than happy to share sort of their views on the golf course. And I think that helped quite a bit during the week, even though I maybe dropped a few shots that I shouldn't have dropped, mainly early on in the tournament, just due to nerves really, but the tips they gave me helped massively.
And could you take us, I was wondering if you could take us like to like that first tee shot, what goes through one's head when teeing it up at, the first tee at the Masters for the first time?
It's really strange because it's not like anywhere, there's no stands. So everyone's stood at your level and it's almost like they're looking you dead in the eye. It's quite a strange feeling. You can notice your family and friends, and it looks completely different to when you play the practice rounds the week before. Because the first tee shot's actually quite wide open, and so is the whole golf course. But the spectators almost make it look narrower. So you're just trying to really focus on a point. And I've been trying really hard to work on cutting it off the left-hand trees. So I just try to really focus on hitting that shot and not worrying about anything else. But it's just an incredible place to be because you see it every year on TV. There's no tournament like it really where there's been so much history and it never changes golf course. So you almost feel like you already know the golf course.
And how do you put, what kind of expectations do you put on yourself for the week? Do you set goals? How does one prepare for that?
My only goal really for all 4 of the majors was to just make the cut, get through the first 2 rounds and experience a weekend on a major. Because I think you've got to really realise that the guys that are playing in those are the very top in the world. And as I was then, I was one of the top amateurs in the world, but not really experienced golf at that level. So the goal really was to just make the cut and then go from there. Like I say, the best players in the world, it was always going to be a tough ask to do that anyway. So that was a really good goal for those weeks.
And how do you reflect if you don't, when you don't make the cuts? What's the mindset on like a Friday evening or afternoon?
I try and look back at the things that I've done well and the things that I didn't do well, and really just as long as I give every week that I play 100%, then I'm happy with it. But there's always things that I feel like I need to improve on. And say like at the Masters, I was second in the putting stats for the first 2 rounds. So that was a huge positive. But then I didn't hit many greens. So it's just looking each week at ways that you can get better. And from playing in those, you learn from the other players that it's not necessarily the things you do good that matter. It's the things you do bad. How good are your bad shots? And that's something that I've tried to really focus on.
Perhaps we could look into that. What kind of data do you collect on your game, or how do you go about looking for like your stats? And is this something you do after the round? And if so, perhaps you could touch on just maybe any examples or softwares or books you use to collect that.
So I use a website called strokeaverage.com. And for me, I've used different ones and I've tried different ones, experimented with all sorts, try and find the one that I like for giving me the data that I need. And stroke average is, for me, the best one out there. And it just helps me break down different things. Like if there's a weakness in my club, just things like that. If you've had 4 or 5 weeks and you think, I keep missing my 8 iron left, you can go and get your 8 iron lie checked and just things like that. It really looks in detail at things. But I do that sort of every time I finish a competitive round. I put my stats in there, and then at the end of each month I review it. So I have goals each month for where I'd like my stats to be relative to what they were before. So for instance, this month I want to improve my bunker play to average inside 6 foot, whereas at the moment it's at 7.5, I believe. And then chipping's a similar thing. I'm just trying to bring the parameters in a little bit and give myself a better chance of getting up and down more often. But they're the sort of things that I look at. And then spotting trends like if my driving's tailing off, why is it tailing off, and things like that. It just gives you a really in-depth look at what's going on in your game.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. And how would you structure the practice? Say like the bunker play, you gave an example, and the chipping. How would you structure your practice for the next week or month to make sure you sort of hit those goals you set out without losing the other elements of the game?
I think I try and taper it. So I'm looking at, is there a technical fault? Is that what I need to improve on? Is it maybe a psychological fault? Try and break down what it is that I need to work on, and then go from there. I do a lot of like short game testing to do with how far away the ball goes. So just one ball in one lie, and then how close can I hit it, and what's my average footage for that test sort of thing. So just little things like that. But if there's a specific area, like for me, the bunker play recently, I've done a lot of technical work and block practice with strike lines and things like that, just really trying to get the technique right and then go back and test it. And the last couple of rounds I've played, the bunker play has got better. So that's the feedback. You do the practice, and then is it getting better in tournaments? And if it's not, figure out why it's not.
I'll touch on the block practice in a second, because we had a question from one of our listeners specifically on that. But the drill you were just mentioning with the one ball, could you just touch on that again and explain how you do that?
So there'll be a mixture of shots, whether it be 9, 15, 20, and they'll all be from different lies. So you might hit shots from the bunker, shots from rough, flop shots, pitch shots, and you hit all of these shots, and then at the end, you sort of write down how close you hit each of those shots, and then add it up, and then that's your baseline. You're trying to beat it, and that also goes back to your stats, because you can look at, okay, my bunker play in tournaments isn't that great, but it's really good in practice. So why is that? Or my pitching in tournaments not that great, but it is in practice. Why is that? So you can start to look at things like that and link it up with your on course like data that you've already collected.
And that's just with one ball?
Yeah, so you use one ball from each sort of lie or shot, whichever you're sort of setting up.
You can just mix and match the lies on that, and then did you record it in like a journal?
Yeah, so I have a practice log. So every day I'll do different tests, and that's how I measure myself when I'm practicing. If I've got weeks off, that's how I measure, am I getting better? I do these tests, and I'll have personal bests, and the goal setting I do is related to on-course statistics and then off the course as well. So if I've had a personal best in one of my chipping tests, then I'll be trying to beat that the next month and stuff like that.
Interesting. And do you come up with these tests yourselves, or is this something your coach sets you, or just on?
I picked up a lot of them. I picked up a lot of them from England golf camps that I use from there, and then there's different ones that I've come up with myself. And me and my friend Billy, he's a member at my club as well. We've come up with different tests that you can sort of compete against each other at and things like that. So I just try and keep things fresh, mix it up, and try and test myself every day, really.
So it also putting a little bit of pressure on the line as well, making the practice accountable.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, if your bunker plays weak at the moment and your last shot is a bunker shot and you need to hit it within 6 foot to beat your personal best, then there's suddenly a bit more pressure on that, and it's not just a bunker shot now. It actually means something to you.
Interesting. We'll touch on the block practice bit. So I got a question. You may even know this chap. He's just gone. His name's JJ Logue, I think it is.
Okay.
And he's just gone to a scholarship in the States, and his question is, what is the best mix of practice to perform really well? Is it 80% variable versus 20% block, etc.? And maybe a couple of examples of variable practice.
I think for me, it sort of changes depending on what your goal is. So like, say for instance, during the season, you're probably not changing your swing and doing a lot of technical work. So for me in the season, I'm doing maybe 70% of testing and scoring, like the variable practice, and then 30% block practice if I've got something I'm working on with my driver or something, I think it's really important that you have the block practice, because it helps your technique gets better, which in turn should help scoring. But then, for instance, off season, you're going to have different things to work on. So I'd probably go maybe 55, 60% testing, and then the rest of it is block, because you're trying to improve that technique. And the off season is the best time to do that, really. It just gives you time. You can make mistakes in the off season, whereas you don't want to be changing your swing and making mistakes during the season. So I think for me, that's the best sort of mix for those two scenarios.
Fantastic. I just wonder if you could perhaps explain what the difference is between block and variable for the listeners, perhaps who don't know as well.
So for me, I class like a block practice session would be I'm on the range hitting balls. I still go through routines and stuff, but there'll be a specific drill that I'm working on, maybe with a training aid that I've got, a swing, like my swing plane perfector or something. I'm hitting balls on there, trying to make the most of a feel. Whereas my variable practice would be maybe a pitching test, or I'm on the golf course playing worst ball. I'm doing a chipping test. That would be my variable practice, where there's something on the line and I'm trying to really focus on it.
Okay, great, thanks. And worst ball is that's a drill where you take two balls out on the golf course and always playing?
Yeah, so I do it where, so yeah, you basically hit two shots from every scenario until you get up by the green. So that's the way I do it. I would hit two balls off tee, play the worst, hit two into the green, play the worst, and if it misses the green, then it's medal from there, rather than two short game shots, because I think it's pointless hitting two short game shots.
Right.
You might as well just hit one.
Yeah, so you only hit one chip and then you have to hold.
Yeah, one chip and then putt out. Yeah.
And then do you keep notes of the score as well afterwards?
Yes, I have personal best scores and keep count of, like, if I've hit two balls, did both hit the fairway? Where did the one that missed goes? And things like that. So you've always got something to look at. You can see if there's a trend going, because it really helps with the focus as well. If you miss a lot of your second shots, you're probably not sticking to your routine properly.
It seems very apparent. Listening to you now, and also just observing you about how you go about your business. You're very prolific about the very small details and numbers, and being very specific on your training and how you go about your business. So where does that come from, do you think?
I think probably because I'm a bit of a perfectionist in a way.
Okay.
I like to try and get things as good as I can in anything I do, really. Whatever I do, I try to do it to the best of my ability. And I think with golf, the more specific I can be, the easier it is to get better. If I can pinpoint exactly what it is that I need to get better at, rather than guessing, then it gives me the best chance to go to the next level.
I think the first time, I met you, you probably did, you almost definitely didn't meet me, but I met you at Q School last year over in Spain at the final stage, Lamine. Is it Lamine?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was caddying for a chap the week before, and I just went to watch and support a couple of friends, Jonathan Thompson, who was on this show previously, and I just noticed you and during the week, and I thought the one person that really stuck out to me the whole week was probably you, just how you walked, carried yourself, and went about your business. It was very impressive.
Thanks.
And there was definitely some sort of presence there, I would say. And I was wondering if perhaps touch on that week at Q School last year, and wonder if you could talk to the listeners about what happened and what you learned from it and what Q School is like.
Well, Q School's not very nice for a start. You want to try and avoid it if you can, but it's one of those things that everyone has to go through pretty much. But last year was really good. I skipped first stage due to my world ranking. I was ranked 4th in the world as an amateur, so I skipped through first stage straight to second, and I've been playing some good golf, finished top 10 in Challenge Tour and made the cut of the Dunhill. And I made a good start to pro golf, and I think I shot 15 under for the 4 rounds at Desert Springs, which qualified in 3rd and got me straight through to final. And then I got the bus up to final because I didn't rent a car. So an overnight bus, which was different, not done that before. And And then, just got stuck in really. It was quite a cold week, really cold to be fair. And the golf courses they're both really nice. But the weirdest thing for me was I struggled on the greens, which is quite unusual for me. And I ended up missing the first cut at final stage by one, which is really frustrating because I was playing really good and had good expectations for that tournament. But I just really struggled to get the ball on the hole. A lot of two putts, hit the ball nicely, but just didn't get the ball rolling properly, which is a bit of a shame. But they're both lovely golf courses, and I'd love to get back there again this year and try and go one better, get full category on challenge, or get a European Tour card. That's the goal.
And just for the listeners who perhaps don't know, at the final stage, it's 4 rounds, and then there's a cut for the last 2 rounds. Is that right? And then you've got to make the final 2 rounds to get a Challenge Tour card. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you make final stage and just play in it, you get the category I had, which is category 15 on challenge, which this year, I think so far it would work out without getting injured that I would have played 11 events. And then if you make the cut, you get full status on Challenge Tour. And then top 25 is a category on European Tour, and top 10 is like a better category on the European Tour. So the higher up you finish at final stage, the better it is for you, really.
Right. And so what happened this year? What tour did you play on? What was this season like for you?
I focused mainly on Challenge Tour, but I started the year, I went to Florida and practiced out there for a few weeks, and then I played on the Portugal Pro Tour, which is run by the guys who do Jamiga. And I had a good few events there. I won one of them. I shot 10 under in the second round to win out there for my first pro win. So that was a pretty good start to the year, and I felt really good. And then just played on a bit of practice at home and started off on Challenge Tour. And I missed the cut by one in Spain, first event that I played, but played some lovely golf. Just didn't get anything going really. Just a couple of steady rounds, but nothing special. And the thing is, once you get to this level, you can't afford like mediocre rounds. You have to play good golf. Otherwise, you're so far back. The standard's unbelievable. So I done that and then played Portugal. And then I made the cut in the match play at the Spanish. And then that's when my wrist started playing up, unfortunately. I felt it that week a little bit. It didn't feel 100%. And I went to Czech Republic, and then I started getting pains in it. And as I'm who I am, I just carried on playing and hoped that it would go away. But it ended up getting worse and worse. And that's when I ended up having to take time off after the US Open and get it healed up. But it's been a bit of a disappointing year in a way, but I've shown some good form the last few weeks. And if I can get something out of Q School and finish the year on a high, that would set me up really well for next year.
So how does someone who likes to work hard at everything they do cope with sort of an injury? What does one fill the day with when you always want to be doing some work?
A lot of putting. I spent probably 3 weeks putting for 6 or 7 hours a day.
Wow.
I just don't have, I couldn't really do a lot in the gym because of where it is in my wrist. I couldn't move it in certain ways and things like that. So I could only train my legs in the gym. So you can only do that so often because you wouldn't be able to walk otherwise. So I done that and then, just putted and chatted to friends at the golf club, spent a lot of time up there and spent time with my girlfriend at home. So she was happy. I got to spend a lot of time with her for a few weeks and went out and done a few things that we wouldn't normally do. So, it wasn't all bad, but after about 3 days, I missed golf. So it was hard work.
We'll touch on the gym in a second. I know this week you're preparing for the Q School first stage at the Players Golf Club in Bristol. What's your thoughts and feelings and going into it?
I feel really good. I mean, I struggled with my driver a bit sort of over the last couple of months since I came back from being injured. But everything's sort of come together, really. I've shot some nice scores at home. I shot a couple of 9 under par rounds at my home club the last few weeks, and I played well at Royal Ascot and Jamaica last week. So I'm shooting under par again, which is nice, and just trying to take it here. Really, the golf course sets up well for me. It's a good driving course, and you're going to have a lot of birdie putts. So, and I'm not too bad at putting, so it should be a lovely week for me. Really, I'm looking forward to it.
And the expectations?
Get through to the next stage. I don't really mind where I finish.
Okay.
I just want to get to the second stage and then go from there.
And
once I get to final, that's when I have an idea where I want to finish. But I don't mind where I qualify as long as I get through each stage.
How many qualify at the first stage?
It's a percentage of the field, so it's not confirmed yet. It just depends how many people tee off tomorrow.
Okay.
So I would imagine it would be between sort of 12 and 20 spots out of 100. So there's plenty of spots up for grabs.
Yeah. Well, I will be there myself, and I'm caddying for a golfer called Matthew Perry, New Zealand.
Okay.
So I may see you there.
Okay, perfect.
I think we're off at 1:00 tomorrow, and then 8:55 the next day. So
yeah, you got the same team times as me, but the other way around.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, definitely wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Regarding to you seem a pretty big gym goer as well. I was wondering if we could touch on what your gym routine involves, the sort of weights you do. More specific, the better. Reps included.
Yeah. So I do a lot of heavy lifting, as I'm sure if anyone follows me on social media, they'll see that I do enjoy lifting weights. I didn't really do it before, and then just sort of felt like with Tiger and all those guys and what they do, it's sort of a no-brainer that that's what you need to do, really. And went from there. And once I got going in the gym, I ended up getting hooked, and I just try and get better at everything, really. I don't want to lift the heaviest weights in the world or be the biggest bloke in the world, but I want to do it to the point where it helps my golf, which is something that me and the trainer I use work on all the time. We adapt the program and things like that. And the main basis of it is things like squats, deadlifts, bench presses, a lot of legs and core, and just trying to get every part of my body stronger and moving better. So say at the moment, coming back from injury, I lost a bit of weight and stuff, so I'm trying to put on a bit more muscle mass now that I'm back in the gym training a bit. So at the moment I'm doing higher reps and slightly lighter weight. So if I went into it a little bit, so say like on a Monday I do a squat, 4 sets of 8 reps on around about 120, 130 kg for a squat. Then I'd move on to good mornings, because I can't really do a deadlift yet because the strength isn't in my arm. Mm-hmm. So I do good mornings, again, somewhere around a 50 kg weight. Can you doing the good morning?
A good morning is to listeners?
So good morning, I use a safety bar so I don't have to hold it with my hands. And it sort of goes around my neck a little bit, and then it's basically a bar on your back. You keep your knees slightly flexed and then bend your top half over. So it's almost like trying to touch your toes in a way, but with a bar on your back with some weight on it. And so it works the hamstrings and the lower back, which is something that I can't do from holding the bar at the moment, just because I'm trying to be a bit cautious of what I do with it in a way. Then move on to like bench press with dumbbells at the moment, because I can support the dumbbells a little bit better.
And is it on the same day, on a Monday? Or?
Yeah, this is on the same day. So the programs I do are all mixed. So there'll be like a lower body push and a pull, and then an upper body push and a pull, and then a core exercise. That's the general setup of the program. So, for instance, like I say, you do a squat as your lower body push, and then your good morning would be the lower body pull, and then the bench should be the push, and then you might do bent over rows, which would be a pull, and then you do a core exercise, and that's the basis of the program for each day.
And are you going to the gym every day, or are you taking a day's break in between?
So I go 3 days a week. So I go on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. And then the winter I'll go 4 days. So I'll go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And then the weekends as like a rest period.
And are you always keeping to sort of 8 reps at a time during these sets?
At the moment I am, but a usual program for me in a tournament period would be lifting heavy Monday and Wednesday, and then explosive Friday. That's my general tournament program. So on a tournament week, I'd do 3 sets of 5 reps squats at 150 kg, and then another day, like the Wednesday, I'd do 3 sets of 5 reps on a deadlift at 160 kg. And then on the Friday, it'd be something like a jumping squat or a jumping deadlift, something like that, like explosive on the Friday.
So you're sort of activating the muscles.
Yeah, just mixing it up. And in the season, I find through testing it that when I lift heavy, I don't ache, whereas when I lift light, I do. So if I lift heavy in the season, I can keep my body where I need it to be and also not ache when I play golf.
Interesting. So obviously you're lifting, quite sort of heavy weights here. How does one keep the range of motion in the swing whilst adding muscle?
So I stretch twice a day and do a lot of foam rolling and things like that. So I have a stretching routine that has dynamic stretches where you don't necessarily hold the stretch for a long period. It's a lot of movement and moving the body in the way it needs to move for golf. And that's something that I've got to really keep on top of. And also just eating the right things.
Yeah, but
the biggest thing that
we're going to just squeeze in quickly. Can you explain what the difference is between a dynamic stretch and is it a static stretch? Is the opposite? Is that right?
Yeah. So a dynamic stretch would be something you don't hold the stretch. So I'm trying to think of one that I can explain. You'd go into like a press up position, bring your foot up level with your hand, and then rotate out with one arm on the floor and one up. Like opening up the chest area and the hips. So that'd be the dynamic stretch. And then a static stretch would be one where you might be sat on the floor and holding your toes and hold the stretch for 15 seconds and ease off and then go again for 15 seconds. So the dynamic is a lot shorter and more of a burst of a stretch in a way.
So you almost move into a stretch and hold and come out of it.
Yes, you're not holding it for too long because I think there's been some research done mainly by the guy that I see for my training that says that if you do the stretching where you hold it for a long period before you play, you'll slow down. Your speed won't be where it normally is.
Interesting. Okay, that's good examples. Thank you. With regards to obviously nutrition, probably is almost as much as important as the actual working out itself. What is the average sort of intake of food look like? So if we start with breakfast, then move on to lunch, dinner, and then snacks in between.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not overly religious with nutrition, but I try and make sure I eat the correct things. For instance, a breakfast for me would be some form of eggs on toast with a yogurt and a cup of tea, and then a protein shake. And then throughout practice, I'd snack on a protein bar or some fruit during the morning. Lunch, I'd have something with carbs, maybe a pasta with some chicken or something like that for veg. And then in the evening, again, like a high protein meal, followed by maybe some fat-free yogurt and a protein shake for dinner. And then a snack before I go to bed.
Any specific brands of supplements you use at all?
I mainly use My Protein for the protein powders and stuff. I found they're the best, and they do an informed sport range, which is really important for athletes that could get tested. You could get tested in golf quite easily. So I always look for things that have got the informed sport logos on. And that just gives you peace of mind that it's been batch tested by the anti-doping agency, and you know that you're not going to get caught out by anything that you don't want to be taking.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's also a company for the listeners called labdoor.com where they do research on all the latest supplements, and I think My Protein comes out as number one in terms of best for quality and value, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, they do a lot of offers if you sign up for their accounts. A lot of 40% offs and things like that, so you can get some really good deals.
Oh, that's great to know. Thanks. And what about when you're actually playing? What are you taking around with you on the golf course? What are you eating and drinking?
I'm taking things like protein bars, bananas, things that give you like a quick burst of energy. Sometimes I take a protein shake out depending on what time my tea time is. And then a sandwich as well, which I quite like having peanut butter and jam on the golf course.
The American.
Which shows I spend too much time in America.
Exactly. With American.
Things that give me like a nice boost of energy and just keep the brain thinking properly. And then obviously drinking plenty of water.
Great. And what brand of protein bar would you take in your bag?
Again, I use the My Protein stuff. Okay. So they do a lot, like a wide range of flavors and different things like that. And also they do gels and stuff if people like gels.
Great. No, that's fantastic. Really good answers. You seem to be an avid man of sort of training gadgets and gear or practice aids. So I was wondering if you could touch on perhaps one or two which you use the most and why you've found them helpful.
Well, probably quite neat. Well, I've probably got three of my favourite training aids. One of them's the putting mirror, which I think is essential for me for putting it. Make sure I'm stood in the right place, eyes are in the right place. I can check alignment, stroke length, whether my stroke's on path and things like that. So putting mirror for me, I can't beat it for my putting. And that's something I'd recommend for anyone that wants to get better at putting. You can just really work on your fundamentals.
Is there a brand name over that one?
All of my putting aids are from Vizio, which is made by Phil Kenyon.
Yeah. I will include that.
Yeah. And then I use two aids for my swing, really. There's one called Golf and Sync, which is basically a stick that attaches to my golf club. That really helps my left arm playing because I tend to get a little bit flat on the way back. So it keeps my left arm playing up in the air and upright. And again, that's something that you can see me using on Instagram. I've posted quite a bit about that. That's a training aid I really like. And then I've just recently purchased a swing plane perfector, which is something that Tommy Fleetwood uses. So it's basically 3 sticks, one that goes on the plane of your swing, just again to work on the same thing. It just offers another way for me to feel where the club is. And instead of having something attached to me, I can actually hit balls without a restrictive thing on me. And it's something that I use in my warm-up now. I use it to warm up and get the club in the right place.
Interesting. I'll be sure to include those in the show notes for people to dig up and look them up. So thank you for those.
That's okay.
What about when you're traveling to a tournament? What are some perhaps unusual items that you may pack for like a journey or a tournament away?
I pack a lot of the usual stuff and obviously the train aids. I pack a swimming float, which is different, I guess. Yeah, so I pack a swimming float to put on my swing plane perfector so I don't snap my driver.
Okay.
So that's an unusual thing to pack. And then I also take a TRX with me, so it's a piece of equipment that I can hang over the door if I can't find a gym. A lot of Challenge Tour events, you won't be able to find a gym nearby or something like that. So I like to take my TRX away with me. And then also an ab wheel, which is like a wheel with 2 handles, so I can do a little core exercise as well with it. So they're probably the 2 unusual things that I travel with, I guess.
Amazing. No, those are great examples. And we'll put the ab wheel, I think I know what that is, in the show notes again for the listeners. I want to be respectful of your time, Scott. So I know we have an action challenge or something which you believe in personally, which you may work on or most of the days, or which you find valuable. It doesn't have to be inside golf. It could be outside of golf, but feel free to fire away.
I think, the thing that I was intending to speak about, we sort of spoke about already, which is, I think, something that everyone can benefit from is stretching. The amount of people that I see at my golf club, especially, that turn up, the older guys and even club members just turn up, get out of the car, walk to the first tee and hit a ball, and don't realise how high their risk injury is from doing that. And you can easily put yourself out of doing a lot of things by doing that. So for me, the thing I believe in more than anything is that you should stretch at least once a day, and definitely before you play golf, because you're trying to swing a club at somewhere between 75 and 120 miles an hour, whatever your swing speed is. There's no way you can do that safely without stretching. So for me, I think you need to get a good stretching routine. There's loads of stuff on YouTube that you can find, golf stretches, any sort of stretching, just to get yourself loosened up before you play golf and make sure you don't get injured.
So this is something I personally suck at. I'm just horrific. I enjoy the weight side of things and always have done, but I've always avoided the stretching element at all costs. So how could you touch on your specific routine and how perhaps we could start to implement this into a habit, as I think it's needed, probably for most golfers as well.
For me, so an average stretching routine for me, I'd start off with my foam roller, and I use a pulse ball, which is like a vibrating peanut ball, and it's made by a company called Pulse Ball.
I have one of those. They're absolutely fantastic.
That's well worth getting.
Okay.
That's incredible. But I use those, just get in the usual places, and everything works. I try and work from the feet up for both foam rolling and stretching. So start with your calves or your feet, work up hamstrings, quads, your glutes, back, shoulders, arms. For me at the moment, my forearm and my left arm where the wrist has been, just working on that and making sure it's loose. And then from that, work on the stretching. You're doing similar things. You're working up from the calves all the way up to your shoulders and getting good stretches that really work on it. And again, it's something that is really easy to look at YouTube. Stretches are quite personal. There'll be some that people can't do and some that people can, and you just got to find the ones that work really well for you. There'll be stretches that I feel a stretch, but you might not. So it's more stretching, sort of trial and error, really. But I always try and work from the ground up, work from your feet all the way up to your head, and get a real good stretch throughout the body.
And the total routine time?
Stretching for me takes 20 minutes, and I do that first thing in the morning, and then I'll do it again in the evening before I go to bed.
So you spent at least close to an hour a day on stretching.
Yeah, and then again, if I'm at the golf club practicing and I've practiced in the morning and I feel a little bit stiff, maybe I've got a little niggle in my back, then I'll go back in and do some more work with the foam roller or whatever and get in there again. So yeah, probably look at an hour a day that I spend stretching.
Amazing. Well, as soon as when you're on the European tour, you can just walk into one of those vans and they can do all the hard work for you.
Yeah, that's the goal.
So you can drop the foam rollers and the pulse rolls, but I will include all of those in the show notes for people who don't know exactly what they are. But the pulse roll, to me, has been a total game changer in the sense of it, even just lying on it and doing not a lot. This is just it's a good vibrating little tool that gets in all the niggles and giggles.
Yeah, and like you say, you can use it when you're watching the TV in the evening. Whatever you're doing, you can sort of use it while you're doing your day-to-day life, which is something that's really good about it. Yeah,
and the other thing maybe the listeners may find helpful is there's a thing called a rad, not a rad roll, a rad ball, or it's called a myofascial release ball. It's a bit like a lacrosse ball or a large golf ball, and you can use that on doors or on the floor to take out any cramp in your feet. It's another good thing to carry around with in the bag or take with you on any tournament. So, Scott, this has been absolutely fantastic. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you've got any questions on my end or anything else you want to touch base on before we wrap up?
No, I think that's pretty much everything, really.
That's absolutely great.
It's been good to join you on the call, for sure.
Yeah, no, well, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your evening, especially this week. I wish you the very best of luck. Where can people follow you online, or have you got any websites, social media accounts where people can stay up to date with your progress and how you're getting on?
Yeah, but I have a website that's under construction at the moment, so it's not quite ready. But My Twitter account is @ScottGregory5, and then my Instagram is ScottGregory94. So they're two good ways. I keep them up to date. And then I've also got a Facebook page, Scott Gregory Golf. So they're sort of the three best ways to keep up to date with what I'm doing. And I post things about the different training aids and gym work and stuff like that. So if people want to read more about what I'm up to, then they're the best three ways to do it, really.
Amazing. Again, I'll put them all in the show notes for people to find you. Scott, thank you so much for this. It's been absolutely fantastic. And wish you again all the best of luck for this week ahead at the Q School.
Yeah, thank you.
And the rest of the season.
Yeah, thank you. And hopefully see you up there.
Yeah, no sweat. Okay. Cheers, Scott. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye. Hope you enjoyed that new episode of makingaclubchampion.com. If you'd like even more from the episode, perhaps some actionable lessons, or listen to another episode featuring another guest, head over to makingaclubchampion.com, where you'll find all of the links from this episode, all of the show notes, the actionable tools, strategies to make your game even more effective. As ever, thank you again for listening to another episode of Making a Club Champion, and hope to catch you on the next one.